Hello and welcome once again to Pond's Python practice. Today I'm going to be talking about local and global variables. So I have defined this function that is supposed to just add 1 to x. I've defined x up here to start at 0. It also keeps track of how many times the function has been called, so that's what this count variable is for, and initially the function has not been called at all. I also define pi just so that I can print it as a random fact. Okay, so the body of the function says that x equals x plus 1, and I could have used plus equals, but I wanted to be more explicit. And it also increments the count. I know that I need to keep track of the count outside of the function, so I've declared it as global. I then print the results and a random fact. Down here, I call the function 5 times just to make sure that everything's working correctly and with no parameters because it takes no parameters. So you would expect that you just see 5 lines of, well, 5 runs worth of function code. This is not what happens, however. I get an error, local variable x is referenced before assignment. That means that my function does not know what x means. There are two ways to fix this. One is to declare x as global, and the other is to pass it as a parameter. The global declaration will be what I do eventually, but I want to go over some other errors that can come up with global versus local first. So I'm going to change the function so that it takes a parameter, and I'm going to use Control K and Control Shift K to change the function calls. Okay, so now what happens? It tells me that the function has been called and the value of x and a random fact. The count is being incremented correctly and pi is correctly staying constant, but x is remaining constant. It is coming up by 1 because the function is executing once and just assigning it to the local variable of x. Now, before I fix this, I want to go over one more use and common issue with global versus local variables. Right now, I don't need pi as a parameter or as a global because all the function is doing is it's reading the value that is stored in the global variable. Now, if I just declare it global now, nothing changes. But what if I accidentally tried to do something with it? Like say I typed pi plus equals 1 instead of x plus equals 1. Well then, that means that the global variable of pi is getting updated, and we get wrong values, like this. Conversely, if pi is not declared global, I will just get that same local variable referenced before assignment bug. Error, I mean. Now, this statement served its usefulness, and it's a bit distracting, so I'm going to comment. So our problem is that x is not being increased. Well, we know already that we can probably fix that by, say, returning, if I can spell return right, R-E-T-U-R-N, by returning x and then assigning it to a variable and then just assigning x equals the function value each time, and it works fine. So we're done, right? Wrong. What did I just say I did? I said that I assigned the returned value of the function to the variable x. I did that outside of a function, so these lines here actually are global statements that are updating this x up here. So I can have the same effect by not returning and using the correct calls and simply declaring x as global. This still isn't quite right, however, because it tells us that the name x is local and global. That means that I'm trying to pass in a parameter that has the same name as a global variable that's being updated. So I can fix that by just removing the parameter from the function, and I can do that now because Control K, sorry, because the function is reading the global value now because we told it to look for a global variable of x. So now when we run the program, it works exactly as we expect it to. And you'll note that this in fact is what I said I would do earlier at the beginning of simply just declaring x as global. I wanted to go the long way around just to teach you some things. First off, a small thing about functions. If a function is assigning a local value to something, it needs to know what that local value is. You can define that within the function, or you can pass it in as a parameter. Or, if it's a global variable, and the function knows that it's a global variable, the function can just read that global variable without it being used as a parameter. Also, that value can't have the same name as any global. We also learned when to declare globals. You should nearly always declare global if the function, sorry, that should be an F, if the function needs to write and or update the variable in question. Sometimes it might also be a good idea to use global variables instead of passing parameters through. One thing to remember there is that any variable defined outside of a function is implicitly global. We also learned a very important thing of when not to declare globals. If the function only reads the value, then that value does not need to be declared global. And in fact, if it is only ever going to read, you probably shouldn't declare global so that you can't accidentally update your global. And also another time that you don't need to declare a global is if that value is only going to be used by one function. I didn't show that here, but just think about it for a second. Global variables are a way for something to be accessed by multiple functions. So why do you need to declare something global if there's only going to be one function that uses it? I hope that this has helped you to understand local and global variables. Good luck.